Hello and welcome to Cards and Cardboard, where we're going to criticize and critique all sorts of board games that we have on our shelves. Welcome to a brand new year, and with that we're going to look at a brand new game, Warhammer Quest the Adventure Card Game. Now Warhammer Quest the Adventure Card Game was originally brought to us by Fantasy Flight here, but it was based on the old game line from Games Workshop called Warhammer Quest, which was a tactical miniature combat game / dungeon delve with some light role-playing elements, which was originally based on the old Hero Quest system. So we're going to see how they translated the game into a card format and kind of scaled down this epic dungeon delving game into a nice little card game. Okay, well, before we get everything set up here, again, we have yet another infamous Fantasy Flight insert. Everything does fit in here, however, it doesn't have much room for expandability or sleeves once again. And it is kind of a pain because it is hard to separate things out of the baggies and get things on the table right away. It would be better off if we could separate these a little bit better, but at this time we're working on that as our own solution. Okay, so now we're going to take you inside the box here. So what we have is a lot of cards, which of course is pretty typical for being a card game. A number of tokens here, then the proof of purchase. As well as two very large boards here. Rather, two sets of very large boards. I misspoke. So we're going to kind of give you a little rundown of what everything does. So in the game, you're going to choose between two of the different type of quests in the game. You're going to have the Delve quest, which is very similar to just kind of putting a bunch of random cards together and going through a dungeon experience. Or you actually have a unique storyline, which has 5 different parts and 5 different quests. Now, the goal of this is to try to complete the final quest, and, well, there is some things that happen in this game, so we're going to show this off a little bit. You have the setup rules for the scenario, and this is also shared on the Delve quest as well. But then you also have a story area, which is a very nice touch, as well as the reward and penalty. Now, reward and penalty are kind of interesting to say. So this is a game where if all the characters die, or rather fail the quest, they will receive a penalty for the next quest going in the line. But should even one succeed in completing the quest, they will get a reward. Now the way you deal this is every turn you're going to have a number of the heroes do actions. Then they're going to resolve various effects throughout the game. And as you progress through the storyline, you're going to have a phase here called the Peril phase. And this is going to advance up the track. It's a little hard to see, but it is a very nice little skull token here that fits on there. And what this does is it tells you on the green, blue, and red areas of the battle mat that these certain events will occur. And what's going to happen is if the tracker ever goes over these again, they will happen again. So what you're going to see most often happen is the track is going to advance all the way up to the end, and then it's going to stay there and keep activating that last effect. This is kind of different in the Delve quest, because in the Delve quest you actually move the tracker back and do not resolve the colored tracks. But generally what you're going to do is you're going to have a number of these locations that have several bits of information on them, including a used specifically for quest or a numbered tier, which you can see on the backs of one of these. So a numbered tier, depending on what the setup is, a spawn value for 2 different areas of the spawn, and a success area. And what you're going to do is you're going to have a number of these locations to get through, and you're going to have to explore the dungeon enough to get that number that by the end of the phase you will advance through the dungeon to the next location until you get to the end. So there is a bit of a race element to the game where you're going to be kind of moving through the deck as quickly as possible, but the penalty as such is that you might have to face monsters. Now this is the deck of monsters. They also come in tiers from 1 to 3 to quest level, which are considered nemesis, or nemesises. And what you're going to do is you're going to build a deck of specific monsters or random monsters to face throughout the game. And when you flip over one of these location cards, you're going to have 2 different spawn areas. Now, the first player for the order will receive the first monster from the red number. And then clockwise, what you will do is you'll pass that number around monsters. So in this case, 3. So in a 3-player game, everyone would have 1 monster. In a 4-player game, 1 person would be without a monster. And in the 2-player game, or the 1-player game, you would have 2 monsters on the first hero and 1 on the second. Now the second area is the shadows. The shadows is kind of a middle area where monsters retreat to, and actually if you move out of the area, will most often disappear behind you, much like outpacing things in the original dungeon delve when you move forward. So getting into that, we're going to show off what it means to actually kind of get through this game. So what you have here is the hero cards. Now each hero has a reference card here, depending on the number of players. You have the Warrior Priest here for 4 players, the one for 3 players, and the one for 2 players. You'll note that the HP value does go up, and actually it'll also give you a brief rules rundown of how the first player token actually works in the different player counts. But just to keep things simple, in the 1 or 2 player game, you're going to be playing 2 heroes. And with 2 heroes, each hero will get the chance to activate twice, starting with the party leader. In a 3-player game, the party leader will get to do 1 activation, then everyone else will, and then they will activate a second time before passing the torch. And in a 4-player game, everybody will only get 1 activation. And what I mean by that is every hero has 4 different cards that they start the game with. And they will always have these 4 cards. These are the 4 actions of the game. You have the attack, the aid, the rest, and the explore. Now, those should be kind of self-explanatory, but we'll break it down a little bit here. So attack is what you do against a monster. Now, monsters can be in different places on the game board, depending on your current status. They can be engaged with your hero, engaged with another hero, in the shadows, or in the shadows unrevealed. And what's going to happen is, whenever you play an attack card, you're going to pull the monster towards you most of the time, and then you're going to try to attack him. And in this case, you're going to kind of go down the rules of the card and utilize the dice in the game. Now the dice come in 2 different flavors. You have white, which is the hero dice, and black, which is the enemy dice. And how this works is, I'm going to say, use my card here and exhaust it in order to attack this monster. I then count each of the monsters currently engaged with me. So up to 3 monsters that are engaged with you, you will have 1, 2, or 3 dice. Now this does not count any monsters who have been exhausted themselves through card effects or player abilities. Those do not add their dice to this total. But for the instances of the dice roll here, we're going to stick with a single monster. So, and single active monster is going to affect your roll by giving you a black die, which is perfect. So what we have here is a monster attacks, but we also deal 2 damage. So we would look at their health total, deal 2 damage to them, but they would also deal 2 damage back to us. However, we do have these shields, which subtracts 1 damage for any attacks that we take. We also have these little success markers, which are little burst symbols, and those will represent 1 success plus a reroll. So one of these with a reroll. The only times you're going to have to worry about damage from things is if you actually guard. Now, when there are no monsters attached to you, you obviously don't have to roll any black dice. And that's really good for things such as exploring. So with the explore action, what you can do is you will roll a number of dice, and the amount of successes you have, you'll actually add progress tokens to the card of the current location. This allows you to kind of progress through the dungeon, and not only that, but you'll also get to draw one of these special dungeon cards, which usually are random events that can sometimes have loot or various gear, items, or events that can help you out or hinder your quest. Alright, so the next card we'll have is the Aid card. Now the Aid card allows you to target another player and roll dice for them, and the number of successes you roll will allow them to gain these little success tokens. Now these success tokens are special because they allow you to put up to 2 on each card, and those will be guaranteed successes. And many of the game's effects also allow you to remove these counters for some sort of beneficial reason. However, there are also enemies and special cards that may take these success tokens away from you. So it is very important to choose where you're putting tokens every time. And then finally, we have the rest action. Now the rest action for this character is also a special action in itself because it has the refresh ability. Now the refresh ability allows you to basically untap all your cards. Every character has a different refresh ability. The Elf Wayfinder has it on their attack, and the Bright Mage also has it on their Explore action. In this case, it's on this character's rest. And what the rest action allows you to do is roll dice, and you'll remove hit points that you've taken, or rather damage points that you've taken for every success that you roll. And that's kind of how you manage your hand. You will be playing the game, and you will choose maybe one ability or 2 abilities, and then you might refresh them, or you will maybe tap all of them and then have to no choice but to refresh them all. And that comes into kind of the nuances of the game. You know, you're not going to be able to always attack, and you're not going to be able to always explore. So you've got to work together with your party of heroes, from the Bright Wizard to the Iron Breaker to the Way Watcher. And you're going to have to utilize your health as a resource, as well as each of your actions as a very valued resource to progress through the game. Now, a few little things that are kind of neat about the game is usually you're going to have a few things come up where you're going to have a status effect. Now, each of these cards represents one of the 3 status effects in the game. At this time, you have basically the ability to become sickened by an enemy, which will allow you to take a healthy -1 to any successes you roll, which is very bad. But thankfully, anytime you rest, you remove this condition. Then you have bleeding, which every time you activate an action, you will take a damage until somebody aids you. And then once that's gone, it goes back in here. And then finally, one of the favorite things I have from the Warrior Priest is actually the Empowered ability. Now this allows you to get an extra defense and a success for any die roll you use. So this is very nice to do with somebody who, say, has some monsters on them and is either trying to kill them or do any action while they have monsters on them, because that's guaranteed success for something as well as guaranteed defense. Now, there's a basic kind of way that everything happens in this game. So starting with the turn, what you're going to do is, starting with the party leader, the first player token, they're going to activate an action, and then depending on the player count, you're going to keep going around until all the actions have been used, in the sense that, you know, in a 4-player game, everyone gets only 1 action. In a 2-player game, people get 2 actions, and in a 3-player game, you're going to have the party leader take 2 actions. After the party has done all their actions, the enemies actually get to come in, and they have a specialized AI on their cards. Now what these do is, when they're in engagement, or if they're in the shadows and they're readied, they will go around and basically activate on any hero that they're already on. So for particular timing, you're going to look at everything that's engaged with you, and if there is nothing engaged with you, you will pull something from the shadows and resolve these effects. Now these effects are very much printed on the card, but there's a few in there that are pretty much the same thing all the time, and that's usually Advance, which is they will engage with you, Retreat, which means they'll go back to the shadows, and Inflict, which means they will deal their damage to the player. Now what you're going to do is you're going to activate every creature on the board until they're all used up, and then you'll go into the location phase. Now the location phase is very special because every card for the locations usually has some sort of effect that's going to happen. And then once that happens, if the place is fully explored, then you will move. Then you go on to the last of the phases, which is the peril phase. And that's where we go back to this sheet where you will move the peril up by 1 and resolve the effects of the peril. And that'll keep the game kind of going in an upward momentum as things get tighter and more enemies come out. Now, what you're probably thinking is, yes, you could probably camp and finish a location after you kill all the enemies, so that way anything that's engaged with you doesn't come along. And you'd be right there, but this peril track keeps things going quickly, so you really can't afford to do that as much as you'd like. Also, that being said, we have a few other little incentives to do things quickly, or rather, as well as you can, because if you succeed in the quest, you will get a chance for these cards called Legendary Rewards. Now, these are found usually in the item deck, and they are these little Legendary Fortune cards. And what those do is they allow you to take very specific player cards for each of the heroes. And what these are is usually some sort of really great gear card that will help you out in your journeys. And the only way they really get these in the main game is to do really well in the quests and succeed in those. Otherwise, in the Delve quest, you kind of get a bit more access to these as you level up and succeed, as well as that you have random chances of them coming out of the gear deck. Okay, so now we're going to take you out of the box and bring you to our final thoughts. Now, if you are a regular of our show, we've actually added a new section just for games like this now, and we're probably going to continue this, which we call the Rulebook. Now, the Rulebook is a very important section in any board game, so we're going to start bringing it up. And when it comes down to Fantasy Flight, well, they kind of done a little bit better job than they normally do. They've condensed it into two different rulebooks, one that follows the advanced rules, and then one that get you started, which is a great way to kind of learn a game and develop into a game system. However, there's a few things in these rulebooks that are a little fiddly and will take second times reading to fully comprehend. There should be an FAQ available as well on the Board Game Geek, that is an unofficial one, I believe, that'll take care of many of the timing mechanics and other things that are not explained in the rulebooks. However, that being said, this is actually a very well-written rulebook, and with the advanced rules reference, you will be able to find most of the questions that you'll have during the game. However, again, you'll find a few cases where you're going to have to refer to the Board Game Geek. So overall, we're going to give their rulebook a solid 8. Now, artwork is our second thing that we review here. The artwork in this game is phenomenal. Every card has a unique flavor to it. Everything in the layout of the text as well as the font, and it's just so good. Much like how Plaid Hat did with Ashes, we have everything here seems to fit the theme very well, and really emphasizes that old Dungeon Delve feel where you're pulling out gear cards and you can see the pictures of what they actually are. Every character's abilities kind of reflect what the character is doing. However, I'm going to take a point or two off here, probably just the one, because some of the text is a little small on some of the smaller cards, and it'd be nice to maybe see, well, actively more female and male versions of the characters. Because right now the male to female ratio is kind of lacking, which it really wasn't in the Warhammer Quest original line. So as the game maybe produces more content, we might see a few more female adventurers. Again, it's kind of a small thing because you could say that they're male or female, however, they're not dual-sided, so you can't really do that. So we're going to go into our third category, which is the mechanics or the mechanisms of the game, the driving force of the game, rather. So what we have here is a kind of hand management, little action selection experience going on here, and you're going to use your life pool as kind of your risk management system. Now, depending on the number of players you have, really depends on how many actions you have every turn, as well as how much health you have. And that's kind of one of those things I wish they could have done a little bit more elegantly. So for mechanisms, we're going to have to give this one, again, a pretty nice 8. There's a bit of randomosity in here, a lot of luck in some cases, but really and truly everything can be sorted out through proper skill and balancing of your resources. And that's one of the things I love about this game, because of the fact that it does give you that flair where, you know, pull that monster off that wizard because he needs to get his spells off. And it's going to save the day and help you out in the long run. So you definitely have that kind of feeling in this game, and it does, you know, carry back to that Warhammer Quest original line. So number 4 that we're going to go into is components. Now the components are really good fare in this game. You have solid cards, solid cardboard. a lot of counters because it's a Fantasy Flight game. However, you're going to get a few dinks off Fantasy Flight because of, yet again, you've got the very basic insert, which is not very cohesive to really organizing the game. And not to mention, it's not very easy to kind of separate out all your cards in a very fashionable manner to help ease for setup. That being said, you also are going to get a little bit of a dink here from the health counters. Now, the health counters in particular come in 1 and 3. They're dual-sided, so they have the 1 facing and the 3 facing on them. And there's a monster in the game that has 25 health points. Not to mention, in the lower player counts, players have more health and need to track their health with those. And what really happens here is you're going to have this experience where you're going to have a load of these health points stacked on something, and it is a bit cumbersome. Now, with a 25 health creature, you could have probably added maybe a 5 on there instead of a 1 or a 3, or you could have threw in maybe a 10 marker or something. But it's very cumbersome. And that being said, there's one other little nitpick, and that's the peril token, which I really wish was an actual triangle rather than a spiky skull thing that's a little hard to manipulate with larger fingers, and honestly will probably end up getting lost in the long term. It would also have been nice to see some rounded edges on the quest boards. That's very nitpicky, though. So, component quality, we're going to give this a good 7. Because they're going to last you many plays, and if you're going to be one of these people who plays Warhammer Quest over and over again like you did with the original stuff, you're going to eventually want to sleeve these cards, but they're pretty good card stock, and you're not going to be handling them that often. So you can kind of hold off on that for a while. Number 5 is our replayability section. Replayability is very much a factor in this game. It's very hard for me to put an exact number on this. Right now, though, I'd have to say, with just given the base box of this game, it's going to be about a 6. So when I say that, you have 2 different ways to play the game. As I said earlier, you have the Delve quest, which is infinitely kind of replayable, very complex, and it'll take about 2 hours with a good group of friends. And then you have the storyline quest, which is about 45 minutes apiece and 5 different scenarios. That's a very complete story. That being said, you're going to come across a lot of things that are going to feel repeated if you're doing the Delve quest over and over again, or you're playing through the storyline. Now, depending on how you succeed in the storyline will really factor the replayability. If you succeed in everything, of course, you're not going to have as much replayability, but if you occasionally fail one of the missions, you're going to continue the quest and be at a deficit. So you do have some replayability in there to try to kind of perfect your method as you play through the game multiple times. And that's the reason why I give that a 6 right now. However, with the caveat, if there is expandability to this game, if you add more monsters, maybe another quest with new locations, and more heroes, more heroes, more heroes, more heroes. We want to see a lot of that in this game, because that's going to allow you to expand your table, maybe make it bigger than 4 players, or at the very least give us more options to choose from to really make a character that feels like it's ours, much like the original Warhammer quest. So, that being said, we're going to go right down to our final thoughts. So the final thoughts and the final verdict on this game is a very good game. It is a very good rendition of a classic game. It is also very small. It has a very nice little $40 price point retail, which compared to other adventure card games is a lot cheaper. Now that being said, like once again, there's not as much replayability in this box as I would like. However, it is very good gameplay. So we are going to give this game a 7 as our final verdict. Now, I really wish I could give it more, but again, that caveat is if it comes out with expansions, you're going to see the replay factor, and hopefully a lot of the mechanical issues kind of get solved over time and maybe expanded. So, we're going to see where this game kind of goes in the future. If there are further expansions, we will do a review of them. Now, we are going to be doing a little review of Warhammer Quest on the computer via Steam, and we are going to be going through and doing a review of the Pathfinder adventure card games and kind of give you our thoughts on those as well in the future. Now that we're done with our final thoughts, that being all said here, I'm going to be expanding this channel out a bit more. Christy and I are working very hard on producing some live play for BattleCon, as well as posting as many reviews as we can physically kind of work on. But you'll have to bear in mind that we have a lot of stuff on our plate that we do other than this. We are also going to do some highlights of some local friendly game stores and maybe even some role-playing games we play. We really want some feedback from the community here to see what you kind of want. Do you want more us playing games and showing you how to play them, or maybe how the game feels when you play it? Or do you want us to do just reviews? Do you want us to do more of the digital reviews? Do you want us to keep our focus on board games? Would you like it if we did some sort of weird mashup with more people? Get our friend Colin back in from Magic the Gathering if you've seen that. Let us know. If you haven't seen it, there is a contest going on until the end of the month here for our Mellow. You probably have about a day or two left after this video gets posted to get on that. So we are giving a free copy away, and we would love to see you online. But with that being said, this has been Benjamin Hernandez and Cards and Cardboard, and thank you for watching our critique and criticisms of Warhammer Quest: The Adventure Card Game.